And now to continue on with the sequel, Psycho Part 2. Came out 23 years later in 1983. Shit's crazy. So the thing is, Norman Bates has been in prison for like 20 years, right? The thing is, they're actually gonna free him. So apparently while he was in there, he had a certain psychiatrist take care of him. We're just gonna call him Timmy. I don't think they said his name or anything. Now remember Marion's sister Lila? She's been put up this petition, had like 700 people sign it to make sure that Norman stays in jail. The problem is because they pled insanity to the kills, he's been reformed. And now they're letting him loose. This shit is crazy. So basically he's free. The doctor drives him back to his old house at the hotel and everything. And the hotel's being run by this dude by name Mr. Toomey. He's getting himself situated now. He's in the house, and all of a sudden he still keeps hearing his mother's voice. But on condition of his parole, he's got a job too. So he starts working at this diner. The lady by the name Miss Polly is like working, making him see around, see the sights and stuff like that. Then he bumps into this lady that works there by the name of Mary. Mary's a waiter that works there. Norman's gonna be working in the back in the kitchen with this dude named Ralph. Mary accidentally dropped a plate, but he covered for her. So when we first see Mary, she's arguing on the phone about a boyfriend or something. So basically, she was supposed to be staying with this dude or something. We found out later on that they finished their shift, a boyfriend kicked her out the house or some shit. So he tells Mary she can stay with him, at the cabin or the motels or whatever. Reluctantly, she takes him up on his offer. So when they get there, he checks on Mr. Toomey, and he notices he's been taking drugs, the motel's changed. So he tells Mary to wait in the house for him. And he tells him certain kids come there for, for a hangout spot or whatever like that. They snort drugs and do all types of shit. And Norman don't like that shit. So he basically tells Mr. Toomey he's fired. Doesn't have his stuff out by tomorrow, but Toomey's like, wait, you can't fire me. He said he don't have regulations through the state or something like that. But then Norman explains to him like, yeah, I got that back the moment I came out of jail. Because he technically still owns the property. Obviously, Toomey's pissed off. Then Norman decides to convince Mary to stay in the house. For one, he don't want her being around all types of drugs and stuff. And two, he doesn't want to have to confront Toomey again, seeing how he just fired him. So he makes her something to eat, sandwiches and milk. What he was feeding Marion back in the first Psycho. She wants to know if they got any knives to cut the sandwich in half, and he said, I don't know if I got any, toolery. She ends up finding a knife, but then she puts it in his hand. We're like, oh shit. And he ends up cutting the sandwich. And she's thinking to herself, like, well, stop raining, I think I'll just go. But after him trying to convince her to stay, she's like, she's heard the rumors about him. So he breaks down and tells her that he killed his mother some years ago. As we all knew from the first movie. Now, why he would tell her this? I guess he wants her to know the real him, so that way she'll find a reason to stay. And she ends up staying. At this point, she's about to take a shower, right? But we see there's a hole in the wall connected from Norman's mom's room to the shower. And of course, normally a picture frame is covering it up. Next day, Norman's at work. I don't realize why Mary got there so late. I'm like, they're in the same fucking house. But as it turns out, she found out her boyfriend is moving some other chick in there, so basically she's being replaced. She said something about talking to a homegirl, whatever like that, to see if he can stay with her. The bottom line is, while they're working, Mr. Toomey comes in. We're like, oh shit. He comes in and starts talking trash, and Norman sits down, is ready to get some food. And he's picking with Mary, talking about trying to get some service. And he starts saying stuff like, how was it? Sleeping with a criminal. So after a while, she basically plays into it, was like, yeah, he was better than you'll ever be. Then Norman sees this note on one of the slips, saying, don't let that whore stay in my house, love mom. I'm like, then Norman tried to explain the note, and we know that there's no note there, so he's saying shit. So it gets to the point where Toomey's harassing Mary. It gets to the point that he's about to come out there. We're like, oh shit. So Toomey basically baiting him to fight. Norman looks down, he sees a cake with a knife in it. He's like, yo, go ahead, grab that knife then. But Norman says, fuck it, goes back in the kitchen. Mary ends up checking on Norman, making sure that he's good. He's over there sweating. The cook tells him, just take a day off, relax. So he ends up going home. The crazy thing is, he gets a knock on the door, and it's Mary. Mary checks up with him, makes sure he's good. Then she gives him some fudge brownies. She decides to stay the night again. Because maybe one, she appreciates him, and two, she's probably out of options. Now, her full name is Mary Samuels. Reminds me of the first movie when Marion signed her name Marie Samuels. She wasn't trying to give her real name to Norman when she was checking in the hotel. Yeah. Next morning, she's getting herself together in the bathroom, and then she turns around and she actually finds the peephole. And she's getting herself together ready for work. Now, the doctor's been checking up on Norman and finds out that Mary stays there. Norman's like, nah, it's not like that. We're just friends. And so the whole reason the doctor was checking on him at this particular date was because he actually quit the diner. Now, why'd he quit the diner? Because he said the boom misses let me get it together. He says a lot more people have been coming to the hotel, so he's trying to fix it up and make that better, and it'll turn out to be a better profit than him working at the diner. But how did it come to this all of a sudden? Because when Mary was asleep, Toomey came back to the hotel talking shit. He was drunk. Then somebody called his house, and then he thinks he's talking to his mother. We're like, oh shit. Toomey goes running around, rummaging around in the office or whatever like that, getting some stuff, right? Then all of a sudden, you see in a wig and a dress wielding a knife, it ends up bang, 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 ding, 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 getting Toomey. Toomey done deal with that his shit. So you're thinking to yourself, number one suspect has got to be Norman, right? He fired this man. He's the only man that got real beef. Hold that thought for just 1 second. And then we get back to the point the next morning where Norman's talking to the doctor. Mary's still working at the diner. Meanwhile, Lila's trying to get the sheriff on the case, you know what I'm saying? But while she talks to the sheriff all of a sudden, hold that thought. We get this situation where Norman's in the house by himself, right? He keeps hearing his mom's voice again. He goes to his mom's room and sees how lovely the room is or whatever like that. So we're thinking to ourselves, did Mary fix up this room? But it turns out that's not the case. He was seeing things. This is some bullshit. So he goes over to the attic looking at stuff or whatever like that. All of a sudden the door locks behind him. So he's pretty much stuck in the attic. But who locked the door? Then all of a sudden you see these random two kids that try to sneak into the basement. They try to get high and smash. Right when they're about to do their thing, she hears noises. All of a sudden they see someone in the background with a dress and a wig and a knife in their hand. The girl gets away out the window. The guy, not so lucky. He got done deal dead as shit. The girl started running. I'm thinking to myself at this point, it can't be Norman, right? Because he's locked up in the attic. This occurred down in the basement. Norman pretty much fell asleep in the act, and all of a sudden the door opens. Mary comes up like she's been looking for him, like, yo, you all right? He says he was locked in, but here's the thing. It only locks from the inside, not from the outside. So now we get back to Lila while she's talking to the sheriff. Apparently, she's getting there to talk about some boy that got killed. So remember Sam from the original movie and how he was messing with Marin? Because you know Marin is Lila's sister, the one that got killed in the original one. Well, it turns out, over the years, Lila and Sam got close and they ended up getting married. But the thing is, Sam's dead now. They didn't say from what, maybe it was just natural causes. Sam was getting it popping with the sisters. Now, Lila's last name is Loomis. Keep that in mind. So the sheriff ends up blindly going over towards the house, and they start asking questions. Then they go down in the cellar, which is pretty much spick and span, right? Now they're trying to figure out who cleaned the cellar, and Mary jumps up and says she did. The only reason they can attempt to believe this, because the cops know this is Norman's first time getting in his cellar in years. In fact, he stays away from this cellar because, you know, he carried his mom down here. Which led to him almost killing Lila and Sam being able to protect them and then getting them into the police and getting them to jail. So it brings back traumatization and all types of memories. So afterwards, sheriff leaves. So it's crazy that Mary likes him so much that she's covering for him. So once again, you're thinking to yourself, she really likes him and she has no other place to stay. So she goes in the bathroom one time and then she looks in the peephole and sees somebody looking at her. But the thing is, she already sent Norman downstairs to make tea. So who the fuck else is in the house with her? And why aren't they able to catch this person? But see, Norman's getting confused, right? He's starting to think it's his mom in the house. We're like, yo, she's not here, she's dead. They get scared and Norman and Mary end up going into her room. He said he's just gonna stay there for the night. Mary's like, look, let's just go figure out who it is. And he's like, no, I'm not going back out there. Because basically, Norman doesn't trust himself. Because if he sees somebody, he's probably gonna murk niggas. They stay in that room all night. Norman has a nightmare. She comforts him. This is after he was standing over top of her with a knife, but the thing is, he's just trying to patrol the room. So she hugs him and keeps him close. So somebody's been making like prank phone calls or whatever like that, and as soon as he picks up the phone, he automatically assumes it's his mom. So we see Mary end up going to this random hotel with who she ends up meeting. She ends up meeting up with Lila. We're like, what the fuck? So it turns out Mary's last name is not Samuels, it's Loomis. That's right. Mary is Lila's daughter. What in all of the fuck? So Lila's plan was this. She was actually staying at one of the cabins in the motel, right? She was going to prank call the house to make Norman think that his mom's talked to him and stuff like that to have him go stir craving mad. And Mary dressed up in a wig and a dress. And I'm like, wait a minute, so Mary was killing niggas the whole time? Well, it turns out Lila was doing the same thing. I'm like, what the fuck? So if Lila can pin anything on Norman, it'll send him right back to jail. But the thing is, Mary's not willing to go through all this no more. She believes that Norman has changed. And Lila ain't trying to hear that shit. And then Mary said, you can't keep hanging on to dead relatives or whatever like that. Marion, Sam, all the victims. But once again, Lila ain't trying to hear that shit. And they pretty much going arguing back and forth. So either Mary or Lila was killing niggas, preferably both? Alright, so let's say this is legit, right? Mary killing Toomey probably makes sense. But either one of them killing a kid doesn't make sense. They ain't got no beef with it. Like, why? So the police get a tip, right? From Lila because she's talking about check the swamps. So they go back to the swamps and find Toomey's car down there. We're like, oh shit. And in the trunk, there's Toomey. And the thing is, the doctor finds out about Lila, and he tells Norman that they were in on it together. But Norman still trusts Mary. So when Mary comes in, he lets her know the deal. This is all after the doctor left. Now back to the police finding Toomey's car. They found him in the back of the trunk. As they're doing that, Mary's like, yeah, we gotta get out of here, we gotta run. Norman's like, to where? While they're trying to contemplate the next moves, all of a sudden the phone rings. Now we're thinking to ourselves, it's Lila prank calling, but he keeps hearing his mother again. Turns out it's the doctor that was actually calling. So when he's on the phone acting like he's talking to his mom, Mary hurries up and runs over to the other phone and pretends to be a mom so that way it doesn't get him stirred up and he doesn't go back to his shit. Now we gotta go a little ways back. When Norman and Mary were outside talking to the police before they were picking up Toomey's car, Lila goes to sneak in the house, but who's following behind? The doctor. She sneaks down into the basement, picks up this big rock. Under the rock is the wig, the dress, and the knife. She's about to put it on, but then somebody else comes from behind and just done deals her ass. I'm like, oh shit. No way it could have been the doctor, right? Turns out the doctor was just about to check the cellar. When he goes down there, there's nothing down there. Everything's all cleaned up. Turns out her body is hidden in a bunch of coals and shit. I'm like, yo. You know them big ass hot coals that you put in the furnace to start a fire? Yeah. And he's looking around. That's when Norman shows up. At that point, Mary was still talking to the sheriff. And that's when Mary comes in the house. And that's when the phone calls start coming again. So we get to the point Mary goes downstairs and she puts on the wig and everything like that and starts talking to him like he's his mother. But the reason she does this... So Norman's convinced he's talking to his mom on the phone and he's saying that his mother wants her to kill her because she doesn't belong in his house and all that other stuff. So that's the reason why she puts on the wig and everything like that and pretends to be his mom. So it gets to the point where he's walking towards it and she's accidentally cutting him with the knife and she's just like, no, Norman, stop. She's like slowly trying to get away from him but still stabbing him at the same time going down towards the basement. Now in the basement, she's damn near like cutting him. He's been trying to grab the knife and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, she looks over towards the coals and sees her mom laying over there. The shocked look on her face indicates that she is not the one that killed her mom. So who the fuck did? Because even before all that, when she was upstairs thinking to herself, somebody else is in this house. Turns out it was the doctor. She got scared by the doctor, accidentally stabbed him in his heart, and he fell over the fucking balcony. He's done deal dead as shit. And now we go back to the basement. She sees her mom laying over there and Cole's done deal dead as shit. And now it's to the point where she thinks Norman did do it and now she's actually going to kill him. Right before she's about to stab him, the police come down to draw guns on her, but she's about to do it anyway. They end up shooting her. She's done deal dead as shit. So now he's at the police station and they're convinced Sam and Lila were the one going around killing people to try to frame Norman. Now we never see Norman in the dress, but I'm convinced Norman was the one that killed Toomley and Lila. Nevertheless, after everything happened, they end up driving Norman home. Norman's at the house about to eat, whatever like that, and all of a sudden he gets a knock at the door. I'm like, who is this lady with the same dress and the wig coming to the door? But it turns out it's Miss Polly. Now you're thinking to yourself, how did he get a job working at this diner in the first place? Well, Miss Polly was the head manager of that diner, but here's the thing. That's not her real name. Turns out her last name is Bates. Turns out that's actually Bates' mom's sister. Norman's mom's sister. And the thing is, Miss Polly is actually Norman's real mom. She talks about all the stuff, how she couldn't handle a baby back then or whatever. It's crazy because when she comes in, he ends up fixing her tea. How did he kill who he thought was his mom in the first movie? Fucking tea and cyanide. So she's drinking the tea and he's sitting there watching her or whatever like that, thinking everything's all good. We're like, oh shit. She's drinking the tea, everything is fine, right? And we get this scene where he shows that he was shoveling coals and putting them in the furnace and the fire or whatever like that. This is before he got upstairs. So while Miss Polly is talking, he grabs the shovel and whacks her in the back of her fucking head with it, yo. He is done deal out of there, yo. Then he carries her up to his mother's room. You can hear him talking like his mom again. We're like, oh shit. And the cycle continues all over again. Yo, this was fucking wild. Now you think to yourself, who was really doing all the killings? Was Norman doing the killings the whole time? So if that be the case, I can see Norman killing the kid because he's like, oh, he's on this property. What the fuck? But then he was locked upstairs in the attic. But was he really locked up there? And you can see Norman killing Toomey because he had beef with this nigga. He fired him and all this other shit. He kept harassing him at the job. And I can see Norman actually killing Lila because she's trying to put him back in jail. She put this whole elaborate plan together to make him think that he's still killing niggas. I'm like, yo, he probably was the whole time. Yo, this movie was freaking crazy, yo. Psycho 2 on Netflix. Check that shit out.